Throughout my experience with the MCU, there have been five specific points of peakness and high financial stability. The original Avengers, definitely the movie that brought us all together. Captain America, Civil War, this one is one of my favorites. Black Panther, one of the first solo movies to reach $1 billion. Avengers Infinity War, where our hearts were ripped out and we didn't think it would ever be the same. Spider-Man No Way Home, where all of our childhoods came together and changed us for the betterment of the entire MCU. That brings us to Thor, Love and Thunder. I've never been the biggest Thor fan. His set of movies holds some of my least favorite movies in the entire MCU. Thor 2, A Dark World, the original Thor themselves. I've never liked those movies. I really loved Thor Ragnarok, but even that was due to the introduction of Valkyrie, having Hulk in the movie itself, and without some of the classic Thor characters. This movie kind of brings the old issues from Thor 1 and 2. I was never a believer of Thor and Jane Foster's relationship. I found it corny. I found that they really didn't have any good chemistry on screen, and I just didn't believe it. I didn't like it. I was not a fan of it. It's really no different here. I went into this movie with a grain of salt, especially with it being called Love and Thunder. If you were never a fan of Thor and Jane's relationship, this movie is definitely not going to influence you to that it's a good thing either. The lack of Loki is very apparent in this movie. It was very sad to see that his inclusion in the first two Thor movies, and especially Thor Ragnarok, was kind of the glue that held the movie together. His wisecracks and his humor kind of bounced off Thor's personality is sorely missed here. And then they bring in Krang, the big rock creature from Thor Ragnarok and Endgame, to try to make that replacement as Thor's humor magnet to kind of bring some more funnies into the movie. And this time it just falls flat. There was really nothing within the dialogue between the two of them that really had me busting a gut or cracking a smile at all. It just felt corny. It felt forced and it felt rushed, and it felt the dialogue that was written for them was just flat out lazy. The Guardians were here as well, maybe the first 10-15 minutes of the movie, because it had to make sense because Thor did leave with them at the end of Endgame. Other than that, they really didn't serve any purpose in the story at all. I was hoping for maybe some sort of a Gamora reference, but not at all. I'm sure if you're a fan of the MCU at one point or another, you've heard Dave Bautista in an interview say that he's about done playing Drax. He may have one more movie in me, which will probably be Guardians 3. Then he's finished with the role. This movie definitely does not help that case at all, because I feel like the Guardians characters were just completely wasted, and he probably felt the same. Now that brings us to Gorg. Now, you know my saying, when it comes to superhero movies, the movie is just as good as how the supervillain is in the film. I definitely understand Gorg's motivations. He was praying to a god. The god didn't answer. Kind of treated him like crap. His daughter ended up dying. Now he wants revenge on all gods. Pretty simple. But what we have here is a great actor in Christian Bale doing the best with what he was given. His dialogue selections were great upon delivery, but just his overall grasp of the mission that he was given by the necromantic sword, the sword that can kill a god. Just what was the end game? Okay, you kill all guys, and then he dies himself. And then what happens to the sword? Why does the sword have this motivation? Why is he so hell-bent on killing other guys that didn't really have anything to do with the decimation of his people and his daughter? It just doesn't get explained too well, which is unfortunate. With the right script, with the right dialogue, with the right motivations, Gore could have been as influential as a Killmonger or a Loki or a Thanos himself. But if you don't have the correct director and the correct screenplay at the helm, you're kind of stuck in some quicksand. You're just not going to be able to flourish. It sucks. And then that takes us to Thor, the mighty Thor, that is, Jane Foster, who was able to acquire the powers of Mjolnir in this film. Why was she able to acquire the powers? Because it is revealed that she is dying from cancer, stage 4. Throughout her unsuccessful attempts to cure herself with chemo and other methods, she tries space magic because with the plot of the film, Mjolnir calls to her and she just goes there and just automatically Mjolnir formulates itself and gives her the power of Thor. That's cool, even though it doesn't really make sense at all other than just to fulfill the plot of the film. Like, how come it had to be Jane herself? Why not somebody else? Oh, because Thor unknowingly placed an incantation on Mjolnir while they were dating to always protect Jane. Well, here's my problem with that. If you were going to place an incantation to always protect Jane, shouldn't Mjolnir have done something about the cancer before she actually got the cancer? That's just me. It's actually in the comic book that she gets cancer. But if you're going to write it into the script for Mjolnir to always protect Jane, maybe have Mjolnir do something to prevent her from getting the cancer before trying to do something when she already has the cancer. It's just my 2 cents. Then that leads me back to the other issues that this movie clearly has. The forced comedy, the forced humor, the corniness, that it is not very comedic at all. These forced half speeches, Thor just yelling at random people and kids, trying to get some comedic value out of the movie that Loki so woefully provided in the other versions of Thor, and it just falls flat. Korg trying to do the comedy as well. It sucks. And then they got this floating head of Hamadal's son, which was one of the worst CGI that I've ever seen in an MCU film. Why? This is absolutely terrible. It literally looked like they just cut it out with scissors and just plastered it on the screen. Like, I could have done a better imagery shot than that, at least to blend it in a little bit better, to actually make it look like a floating head instead of just a picture of a floating head. Not to keep focusing on this one part, but to put it into perspective, the floating head at the Haunted Mansion at Walt Disney World and Disneyland looked better than the floating head in Thor. And they try to give us this weird forced sisterhood camaraderie scene with Jane and Valkyrie, of them about to go into battle to try to save the kids, and them smacking their weapons together, and then Valkyrie pulls out a boombox and plays Mary J. Blige. Just the cringiness of it, just come on, man. What are we doing here? What are we doing here, man? Come on. And then Jane and Thor trying to figure out catchphrases. It's like, I gotta come smash it with my hammer. just the whole, there was just nothing entertaining about these little quips and quirks sections at all. I was not a fan. I just wanted it to end just to progress the story. Now for Valkyrie specifically, Tessa Thompson has always been my favorite female superhero in the MCU. Very easy on the eyes, very beautiful woman, so really no complaints with her specifically, other than the fact with the script, she virtually gets no character development at all. She's still essentially an alcoholic, suffering with the loss of her sisters from Hela. Even though, in my opinion, she does seem to fit the role of King quite nicely, even though she really doesn't even want to be in the role herself. And that takes us to this goofy scene of them sneaking into Zeus's chambers to try to recruit an army to take down Gorg, and then them trying to put on disguises, and then Zeus blowing off the disguise and making Thor naked for all the women to just gawk at. All right, man, that's fine, whatever, sure. Whatever you need to try to make your movie somewhat pleasurable for all audiences involved. But I think if you are going to try to make a pleasurable movie, then maybe make a pleasurable movie and not fill it with all this bullshit. Just saying. Then that brings me to Zeus himself. Now, I'm not the biggest Greek mythology pantheon in the world, but the way they did to Zeus in this movie, I just was not a fan of it at all. They made him a complete cream puff. The only thing that he was really interested in was orgies and having a good time, and not really interested in battle or actually running an organization. whatever. It's fine, man. If you're gonna take characters like that are supposed to be pantheons of an entire comic book and make them literally into a joke, do you? It's your movie. I just wasn't a fan of it, especially after seeing so many versions of Zeus that is an absolute mad king or a dictator or just with the power to destroy the universe, it seems. Not to mention, after him throwing the lightning bolt at Thor, then him catching it and reversing it and one-shotting him. All right, that's cool. King of the gods downed in one blow of all of Greek mythology. All right, that makes sense. Did y'all know that in the comic book, Zeus is supposed to be as powerful, if not more powerful, than the Celestials and Odin and more than Thanos himself? Come on, man. You see what I'm saying? Come on. Oh, then that takes us back into the relationship dynamic between Thor and Jane Foster. I'm not in agreements of why they started dating. I'm not in agreements of why they broke up, because they grew apart and were afraid of getting hurt. The both of them, sure, man, it feels like lazy writing to me. Because even with all that, I feel like at least they finally explained it. Because they really never explained why they broke up originally. But with that, there's essentially not an MCU movie where that I can remember where I didn't feel any sense of emotion about a main character death. I pretty much assumed that Jane was going to die about 25% into the movie. There just was not any way that the movie made me care about her impending doom, because it reminded you that she was going to die every time she took off the Thor powers. Like, yep, she's not getting any better. This is not working. She is not going to get better. What is she going to do in Thor 5? Is there going to be a Thor 5? I doubt it. So it's probably time for her character to really just go on off to Valhalla and be happy. No pun intended. Every fight scene in this movie was extremely CGI heavy, and I really didn't get any pleasure from it at all whatsoever. Even the Gorg fights, even when they went to the planet that was black and white, there's just nothing, man. I felt really no sense of emotion, even when Valkyrie got stabbed. Hell, my theater was like, oh no, and I was like, oh, okay, who cares? There's just nothing, man. And then even when, Thor reversed Zeus's lightning bolt and threw it at him, I'm like, that's kind of cool, even though it should have taken way more to take down Zeus, like I've already explained. But like, it essentially got to the point where it's like, how many times can I see Thor swing Mjolnir or Stormbreaker around before I'm like, it's not doing it for me anymore. There's nothing new. The only really new aspect of their battle style that we saw was when the mighty Thor, it's just Jane, you have Mjolnir break apart and fly off in different pieces and hit the peeps like it's a machine gun. But we kind of saw that in the trailer, so that wasn't even a surprise either. So other than that, there was essentially nothing new that they did with the fight scenes that we haven't already seen before. Gorg's sword, it was just essentially a normal sword with the power to kill gods, and it can create shadow monsters. Other than that, it just really didn't do anything special. It was just boring. It was just boring, flat, not what I was wanting from a franchise of movies that I've come to love so passionately. Yes, and that leads me to the main point of my video. The MCU at this point has peaked. The 5 movies that I mentioned at the beginning of the movie, Black Panther, Infinity War, Civil War, The Avengers, Spider-Man No Way Home, that is the peak of the MCU. Other than that, the rest of the movies have kind of gone down, at least since Spider-Man No Way Home. The shows are just subpar, and my passion for this is starting to die off. And that is an eerie feeling, if I'm being completely honest. I kind of had an inkling when Endgame came out. They're like, wow, I don't think it's going to get any better than this at all whatsoever. Then Spider-Man shocked the shit out of me. But after that, this really has come to pass. Like, well, yep, I'm not really excited about She-Hulk. Even Wakanda Forever, I'm not really excited about that. It's just everything coming up. I mean, Doctor Strange was okay, but that really didn't fulfill my expectations. It was okay, but definitely not perfect. But there's just nothing really coming up soon for the MCU where I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. And that's not good. So hopefully Kevin Feige can gather the troops together again and make us lead towards something. Hopefully, Kang can really hit the news home in the new Ant-Man, so really give us something to look forward to. My hopes are not high, if I'm being completely honest, but I will always be optimistic. You can't do so many movies within the same franchise and not have your highs and your lows. So hopefully the highs will return to us sometime in the future. And speaking of the future, what is in store for the future for Thor and his adopted daughter, which, if you didn't know, just happens to be his real daughter in real life. That's pretty cool. I give you that. But to be honest, man, I really don't care. Maybe we'll get a Young Avengers Thor show of this little girl running around with Stormbreaker and kind of learning her powers. That might be something interesting. Or maybe they'll make Thor 5 and we'll have a story with Thor and his daughter. That would be interesting as well. Would I go see it? Of course I would go see it. Would I enjoy it? I don't know. Is Tika gonna direct it again? That wouldn't be my choice. So hopefully they were able to figure that out in the storyboards to continue Thor's story. And with that, I think I'm going to end it, man. I hate this outfit. I really do. It's a complete waste of time and a complete waste of an action figure. If you enjoyed the video, if you have some thoughts and comments, if you think I'm crazy, or if you think I'm right on the money, don't forget to post your comments and hit that like button. Remember, watching the video is great. I appreciate that. But if you really want to see my channel grow, commenting is by far the most important. So you can follow me at youtube.com/marjack79. I am also on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I still kind of want to talk about Lightyear too. We might do that as well. But again, I really wasn't a fan, so it's kind of been beating my toes on it, but we'll see. All right, guys, I will see y'all on the next one. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.